Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Jason Mackey's First 10, a daily podcast that's just a little bit shorter than your normal podcast. Do want to remind you that we're sponsored by the North Shore Tavern. You don't have to be a baseball fan to love it there. The interior is wall-to-wall Pirates. There are appetizers, entrees, cocktails, and, of course, steak and seafood on a sizzling lava stone. Open every day. The North Shore Tavern across from PNC Park is Pittsburgh's home for steak on a stone. Going to be a lot of baseball talk today. I wanted to get into the Pirates' 11-5 loss to the Cincinnati Reds last night, and some concerns about their pitching depth, minor league level, major league level, some stuff going on there, some offensive concerns as well, and just overall with the team and where they sit. Also want to talk to you a little bit about the Willie Mays column that I wrote and give a behind-the-scenes look at that and how that came together, and talk maybe a little bit of hockey if we have time about the Stanley Cup Final last night. Congratulations to the Florida Panthers. But first, going to kick it off with the Pirates here, and I'll be honest, could feel great, could feel better about what they have going on. Right now, it's not great. They've lost 3 of 4, 4 of 6, 7 of 12. And last night, to me, was the story of pitching depth or a lack of it and some concerning signs if you're a Pirates fan. Year 5 into a rebuild where we're looking at Justin Bruhl, Dennis Santana, and Dalton Jeffries. Don't love it. Can't imagine that you love it either. Bailey Falter is its own issue. I'm going to get to that in a second, but I wish they had more pitching depth. I do. Beginning of the season, we thought the bullpen was going to be a strength. To some degrees, it has been. When David Bednar, Aroldis Chapman, Colin, Holderman have been healthy and on, that's a very good 7, 8, 9. No issues whatsoever there. I've even liked largely what Luis Ortiz and Carmen Mlodzinski have done. Lately, that's been more as a opening bulk guy couplet with Martin Perez and Quinn Priester out hurt. I do think that will help them a little bit. Perez is going to be back before too long, and you can shift those guys into other roles. At the same time, it thins out fast. And if you look at, sort of step back and what they have going on, Ryan Baracki injured. When he comes back, theoretically, if you have the rose-colored glasses, like, he's going to come in and be what he was last year and be excellent, and that helps. Hunter Stratton is hurt. He's worked a lot for them. Surprisingly, I didn't realize it was like a 1 ERA, something between about May 24th and before he got hurt. I didn't realize it was that good, frankly, until I looked it up this morning. But, right now, if you look at their situation, you say, why is Bruhl pitching? Why is Santana pitching? Why is Jeffries pitching? Okay, well, there's not much else. And that's concerning. I mean, are you going to go to AAA Indianapolis and get Ben Heller, Ryder Ryan, Brent Honeywell Jr.? I don't know. I don't imagine that any of those guys are terribly inspiring, and that's nothing against them. It's just, you're giving opportunities in a place where things haven't exactly worked out great. You hope they do, but just the lack of depth is what gets me. And, I go back to what they did with Roansy Contreras and Jose Hernandez. And I don't think we know all there is to know there. Maybe they just thought that they couldn't reach Roansy anymore. And to a degree, I think they're maybe right, probably right. I mean, I don't know if it was going to happen here, but there had been so many things that had gone awry prior to that. As far as Hernandez, that's just weird. DFAing a guy with options. You could send him down, tell him to work on something, and instead you say, get out of the organization. Basically, the lefty who throws 95, 96 and is young is going to get claimed, which he did, goes back to the Dodgers. Anyway, the Roansy thing I'm finding more and more painful. I don't think it's on the level of Tyler Glasnow or Garrett Cole. It's not. It's only been 9 games since the Pirates DFA'd him. But I would not mind having Roansy right now. And it does seem like he has improved his performance in those 9 games, 13 2/3 innings, 3.29 ERA, 170 batting average against, 5 walks, 13 strikeouts. Again, not beating the world, but I would take that over Justin Bruhl, Dennis Santana, and Dalton Jeffries at this point, especially if they need some length. It's a shame that they weren't able to reach him. 2021, thinking about Roansy and O'Neill coming up here, and it's so exciting. You had the road days. Like, he was the pitching prospect before they had the legitimate pitching prospects and just couldn't get through to him. So I'd like to see the pitching depth improve. I'm not really sure how it does. We talk a lot about the trade deadline and are they going to add a bat? Where's that bat going to be, etc. Not saying they don't need to, but I think a reliever, some bullpen help is equally as important in the discussion. Offensively, that wasn't necessarily the issue last night. Brian Reynolds extends his hitting streak to 21 games. O'Neal Cruz hits a monster home run. It was cool to see him and Ellie De La Cruz also go yard. Very, very long home runs, but just not enough to get it done. And part of that was Bailey Falter. I've liked what Bailey Falter has done to this point, but frankly, a little bit worried. Failed to cover 4 innings for the first time in his 4 starts, writes our Andrew Destin. Falter entered June with a 3.22 ERA. I'm going to make you cry, but it's 6.33 over his last 4. Unfortunately, he probably has more of a record of the recent performance in the major leagues than he does that 3.22 ERA heading into June. Now, I think the Pirates did find a repeatable recipe with him. I don't think he's doing anything that is outside of his capabilities, using his extension, throwing his 4-seamer at the top of the zone. But the margin for error there, as we saw last night, goes 3 perfect innings and then the wheels come off. It's very thin. So to me, that's just something that you'd like to see, that early season Bailey Falter, but I think we might also see some of what we've seen over the past 4 starts as well, which is a little bit concerning for a team as thin on offense as the Pirates is. So, all right, going to transition a little bit to that Willie Mays column. I want to explain how that came together and some fun stuff behind it. If you didn't read it, it's basically a collection of stories from various books on how Willie Mays was almost a Pittsburgher. One of them was growing up in Alabama. His dad had known some men who had come up here for steel industry jobs. And so there was a natural curiosity or knowledge between the two places. At the time, I believe it was 1943, Alabama had also scheduled to play the Pitt Panthers at Pitt Stadium. Never happened because of World War II. But there's a dialogue in one of the books that I read parts of. Anyway, I'm not going to try to fool somebody into thinking that I read 4 books in 4 days. That's a little nuts. But I did fall down a fun rabbit hole, and I'll explain why in a second, of reading Willie Mays stuff. But he explains to his aunt about, how he'd like to see his son play football in Pittsburgh for Pitt. So I found that cool. There was also a story in there about how the Pirates wanted Willie Mays as a pitcher. The Birmingham Black Barons manager meets with this scout and says, you can have Willie Mays for $2,000. Scout says, nah, I would want him as a pitcher anyway. That was too much. And the scout, or the Birmingham Black Barons manager, at one point, oh, crap. And years later, he said something that could have had Willie Mays and Roberto Clemente in the same outfield. And Pirates fans really want to hear that. And there's a crazy story. And this is about, sort of nerding out and how I did this. I've really learned to enjoy, or I've come to enjoy, things like research-based stories. Where sometimes, at least as a columnist, I write something that's like opinion, feeling, emotion-based. It might be reaction off of a game or something that happened. Cool. You might do a reported story where you talk to people and cull those different opinions or dialogue or whatever into more of a feature thing. And you can also do research things where, I was going through past couple of days, like Internet Archive. You can look at books on there, or checked 1 or 2 out of the library, and you can look at digital copies. Amazon Kindle was a resource. I'm trying to think what else I used, but there were a few different ways. Newspapers.com. Brian Batko has a subscription for our staff, and you can just go there and read old papers. And I was doing that for the incident. I think it was May of 1958. Reading Les Biederman's Pittsburgh Press story of a doubleheader between the San Francisco Giants and the Pirates, where tempers flared. Danny Murtaugh says something to Ruben Gomez, and Orlando Cepeda goes and grabs this weighted bat, and he's going to charge after him, and Willie Mays tackles him. So just some wild stuff in there about Willie Mays nearly playing in Pittsburgh, and just stuff you find combing the archives. Lastly, again, congratulations to the Florida Panthers. Really cool. I don't have many personal connections to this other than Paul Maurice, a story to tell a couple of years ago. I was doing a story about Jim Rutherford, how I thought he should be in the Hall of Fame, and had some people talking about that. And Maurice was one of the guys that could not have been any more media friendly. You probably know that from watching him or seeing his interviews with the Panthers. Was on the phone for a long time talking about how it's Jim Rutherford. I'll talk about him anytime, anywhere. Those two obviously have a great relationship, but good to see Florida get it done. It's a quality organization with some really great people. I remember going down there for the Yarmir Yager story and how good they took care of me, and how passionate the fan base can be when they win. I think you saw that a little bit last night. I mean, it's not, it's not Minnesota, it's not Canada, it's not Detroit or Buffalo or any of these other like crazy U.S. markets. Pittsburgh, certainly throw that in there. But when they win, when they give people a reason to care, it can be really, really neat. And it's a fun team. Sam Reinhart, Carter Verhage get the goals last night. The only thing I didn't like, I don't know if you shared this opinion, is Connor McDavid winning the Conn Smythe. I could do without that. I understand why, like 42 points in a postseason is crazy large. I'd rather see it come on a winning team. I thought Sergei Bobrovsky should have won that, but I don't think anybody really cares too much about that. It's interesting that the Canadian Stanley Cup drought continues. Still been since 1993 since a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. Montreal, the last to do it. We're going to get into more hockey talk later in the week. Just a fair warning with that. But in the meantime, have some Pirates to get to tomorrow on this podcast as they will take on the Reds in game 2 of their series. We'll get into all of that. Make sure you like and subscribe. You can get this content and stuff from all of our other Post-Gazette writers right here on the North Shore Drive Podcast Network. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.